In 2006, a college student created a YouTube account with the username SexyPhil. Inspired by other popular vloggers at the time, he wanted to make content about the news, pop culture, and what was on his mind. A college dropout, in a moment of desperation, he asked his viewers to support him while he was living from his car, to pursue his hunch that being a YouTuber was the right move. He continued uploading, becoming one of the top 5 YouTube channels in 2010 and becoming a YouTube OG and mainstay on the platform. Welcome to Rewind Time. This episode, we're talking about Philip DeFranco.
Yeah, it's Rewind Time.
Welcome to episode 7 of Rewind Time. Philip DeFranco. Lucy, how are you this week?
I am, party rocking. Episode 7.
I know.
Who would have thought?
In the top probably 10% of podcasts by episode count of all time.
You did look at some stats. We were just, checking the stats to see how we were going. And technically, I think you need like 100 viewers an episode to be in the top 25%. So we did it, everyone.
There's something like 130,000 podcasts on Buzzsprout where we looked, and overwhelmingly, most of them get like 20 listens.
Wow.
Yeah.
So guys,
I feel flattered.
You need to keep us in check. I feel like our egos, it's going to go to our head. We'll start using that. We'll put it in the bio. We'll be like top 25 podcasts of all time.
I actually feel energy levels are high. We had a week off. We went to Brisbane.
Yes.
So we didn't record last weekend. So I have so much creative energy that's been built up.
You're so excited to talk about the topic
and
for
we
today.
did I would describe as an easier YouTuber in that there isn't as much content to review. So I feel like as opposed to Michelle Phan, where we ran quite long, this is going to be an easy breezy, tight episode. Fingers crossed.
We'll see how we go. We thought Michelle Phan wasn't going to be a super long episode. So, if anyone listened to last week's episode, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like that full deep dive of Michelle Phan, if you weren't interested, you could have skipped through, I suppose. But I do agree. I think today will be a bit of a shorter run time just by virtue of the subject matter at hand, which I guess we'll get into.
Well, yeah, from your intro, Sexy Phil, Philip DeFranco,
crazy
as some of you may know him. Did you know about Phil before the episode?
Philly D?
Is that yeah, sure. In case you guys, I'm sure you probably guessed, I had no idea who Philip DeFranco was. I don't think I've ever seen or heard of him before.
Never heard of his name.
I saw him obviously when we did I Justine, and you were like, that's Sexy Phil in one of her vlogs. And I was like, okay. But before that, I had no idea who Philip DeFranco was.
So only in the context of this show?
Yes. So 4 weeks ago, probably.
Okay. Wow. I have been aware of Philip DeFranco for quite a long time. I think he does go into the category of YouTubers that I personally didn't really watch. And spoiler, not spoiler, but obviously Phil's channel content is quite current events focused. So I am not subscribed, was not subscribed, but was aware that he was like a news guy, on YouTube, and have been aware of that probably for like, I want to say about a decade.
Did you watch his big breakout videos at the time?
I have watched a few of his videos at different times when he might have been like the first person to cover something on YouTube. And I was aware of, vaguely aware of some of his coverage that we'll discuss in today's episode, like his, bigger stories. Although I will say any videos that I would have watched of Phil when I was younger, it's not like we can watch them now.
Yes. Maybe let's address that. So Philip DeFranco, his main output is the Philip DeFranco Show, which is a, 10 to 25 minute long, generally, current affairs, news and pop culture, like sort of content aggregation, It's
like a wrap up. It's
exactly.
Like these are the big stories of the last few days. I think the upload frequency has changed quite a bit throughout the years, but it's typically like a few times a week. I think it's like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence. It has changed. So
a lot of things have changed about the show, except for it being Phil presenting straight to the camera generally, as far as we can tell, he's the only person that is ever
Yes.
featured.
Yeah.
There's no rotating crew. It's all about, well, I mean, it is called the Philip DeFranco
Yeah.
Show. But, and yeah, like the length, I think, as YouTube allowed longer videos, the length has increased
They're longer
a fair
now.
bit.
They're about 30
Yeah.
to 40 minutes.
But the pace is always kept like YouTube tight. Like he's cutting at the end of sentences. He's doing traditional YouTube style editing.
And presentation as well.
Yeah.
He's speaking very quickly. He's very like, and this is the story, da-da-da-da-da. The cadence of his speech is really quick.
Yep.
It's very, kept very, tight,
Yep.
I would say.
But as you alluded to before, the reason we couldn't watch potential videos that you had seen is that around 2017, we believe Philip DeFranco privated all of his past videos up until that point.
Yes.
So he obviously, with that upload cadence, had released many hundreds, if not over 1,000 videos on his channel. And yeah, he privated everything.
It's over 10 years worth of content. So I think I said in the intro, he started his channel in 2006. I don't know when he started taking it seriously exactly. And I do apologize because I feel like we try to be a little bit more in depth with the details, but it is just so hard to find. But yeah, about 10 years worth of content has just been completely privated. Some archives have been uploaded. There's shout out to a couple of channels that have like randomly posted like 10 of Philip DeFranco's old videos. So we watched those. So we have a sense of what his early content is like. But yeah, we kind of can only use those as a frame of reference. It does seem like it has been lost to time.
Yeah.
Which is,
I will say, because it is current events, it is not like fatal to us discussing Philip DeFranco because he gives a lot less sort of original creative input into his content than all the YouTubers we've looked at so far.
It's not the same level of tragedy as if we lost, like the I Justine songs.
Oh,
like that would be
100%,
sad. Do you know what I mean?
And
Like
well,
if we
and Justine does like news content, but overwhelmingly like her stuff, she is either giving like original output by like creating comedy videos or she's at least giving her opinion in doing a review or saying she likes something. Philip DeFranco often does not do anything I would describe as transformative. He just presents the story and a summation of it.
It's more of like a service.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay, we should really tell. All right, so guys, Philip DeFranco Show, like Lucy mentioned, you have Philip talking. He talks in a very quick and sort of exaggerated delivery style. He often includes humor. It's sort of like if you've seen like The Daily Show or other like news/comedy style TV shows. He's trying to like make the news more interesting.
It's like Joel McHale
If
vibes.
you've seen The Project, if you're Australian,
No.
you might be familiar with Channel 10's The Project,
Oh,
where we do.
gosh.
He's like, we do news a bit differently here. Like we have laughs.
Yep. So we have share plates on the table. So as opposed to everyone ordering things individually, we
Yeah,
have
100%. He's that for news, right? So we started with some of these archived Sexy Phil videos from around the like 2006 to 2010 range. We can tell that's when they're from because of the news that he speaks about at the time.
Yes, that does help. Like the person's like, oh, sorry, like I don't have the exact date of when it was uploaded, but then he'll just be like, Michael Jackson died today. And you're like, well, I guess we know when this was.
Phil became kind of popular in this period, and there's this profile that was written in the LA Times, which is like everywhere you see Philip DeFranco mentioned, they use this specific like summary of his channel and ethos, and it's very funny. So they wrote, Philip DeFranco, the Walter Cronkite for the YouTube generation, who generates hundreds of headlines in under 10 minutes, will add election coverage, blah, blah, blah. So he, introduces politics. But comparing him to Walter Cronkite, who is like an established US news anchor, to me is...
I have
you don't
no
know him.
frame of
Yeah,
reference
he's like,
of who Walter
he's
Cronkite
like
is.
the when you think of like news anchor, like journalism, it's like he's the name you would go to, right? He's the Kleenex of news anchors.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, like what network are we talking?
Oh, okay. I don't actually watch TV, so that's lost on me.
Then
I
you
want to
don't watch
say, I
YouTube
want to
either.
say CBS, but
Okay.
I'm not going to
But
check that.
He's like a very respected, like,
Yes.
he was there covering
Yeah,
the
exactly.
news. We reported the news.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so like the Walter Cronkite for the YouTube generation gets thrown up. So I was like, oh, this guy's going to be doing like, news and
Hard-hitting
stuff.
journalism.
Exactly. Overwhelmingly, these early episodes, I think the thing that stood out for us is there is like such a pronounced emphasis on hot babes,
Yeah.
on sexy women,
Yeah.
and I'll get into it.
But okay, I think something we need to say is that we don't actually know. I don't think there has been like a written explanation from Philip DeFranco, or he has not said, and he may have and we've missed it. He's not said this is why all of those videos are privated. They just were.
Yeah.
I can assume, and please feel free to disagree with me, I can assume from watching some of these early videos, I'd be like, yeah, I would private those too. Because there are some just generally, I don't want to be too harsh, but like there's some pretty rotted takes or just general like misogynistic.
Look,
like
it's not just about the women. He says some stuff
crazy stuff.
I would assume that he is embarrassed by stuff that's in these videos, and also he probably wants to avoid people clipping it and recirculating it and causing him a headache in the present day.
It's like shock jock stuff.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's very kind of, you know, I think we were talking about it before, but like Kyle Sandilands vibes in terms of he's not, he's just saying stuff to say it. I don't know how
they did another piece in the LA Times at that time where they were like, why are YouTube videos, why are the thumbnails where it's like a sexy woman or like references sex, why are these the most viewed videos on the platform? And I'm like, obviously, like we know why. But they talked to Phil and he was like, so I posted this video and it was called Big Boobs and You. And it was him talking about like what he thinks is like the hottest type of woman. So this is like his type of content, right? And the thumbnail has a woman with large breasts. And it became instantly his most popular video. And then he said to the LA Times, he was like, sex sells. And then he said, sex, gossip, and news, that is my bread and butter. So on our old Philip DeFranco videos, so we have the piece where he's talking about Megan Fox watch. Yes. Megan Fox is one of his preferred babes.
Like a recurring segment. Seemingly, it seemed to be like, and it's time for another Megan Fox watch. And we're like, okay.
He also does a extended bit on another episode where he compares Scarlett Johansson to Jenna Jameson, the porn star.
Yeah, it was in the context of like a rumored biopic or something like that. There's it's like some fake thing because obviously we know that didn't happen. So he's just covering that, but then he's comparing which of the two are hotter, which is not the story, but he makes that the topic of conversation.
Exactly. He has another piece where it's like a comedy bit about how to go viral in YouTube, and he does explicitly say he's like, you have to have something referencing dancing, girls, or sex in the title.
Yeah. So
and then he's complete with like a cutaway gag to a sexy woman doing like a piece to camera where she's like, Phil, you need to have these in the title. And she's in her underwear.
Yeah. So it's clear that he is self-aware that he understands why this content performs for him, but it's sort of not clear as to whether he like believes in what he's saying. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know if this is in this section, but the Vanessa Hudgens stuff.
I want to bring that up now.
Okay. Yeah.
So this probably, and we only got obviously select videos from this era.
A tiny sample size.
You know, maybe this isn't typical.
No, but I was grimacing through every video. Every video had a bad take, unfortunately.
I think this is the worst thing.
Yeah, this was really bad.
So Vanessa Hudgens, High School Musical star at the time, she's dating Zac Efron. As part of their relationship, presumably, she experienced or was victim of like a phone hacking scandal, and a bunch of her private nude images were leaked online. The reaction to this from Philip DeFranco.
This is like the second time it happened. It had happened once, and this was like the second occurrence of this, and he was reporting on it's happened again.
He is very much like, Vanessa Hudgens, why are you taking photos of yourself? Why don't you have a passcode on your phone? Which, you know, that's unsavory by itself. But then he goes on to say, I have seen these images and her boobs look like torpedoes.
Jesus.
And then he goes, I have included the link to the photos in his like YouTube links section.
Yeah, he's
basically.
like link in the sidebar. Yeah. So he's shaming her. He's basically slut shaming her for having this happen to her. He also kind of is like, oh, this has already happened to you before and it's happened to you again. Didn't you learn anything from the last time? You shouldn't be taking photos of yourself. Then he's like, the photos you take of yourself, like, I don't think you're attractive, essentially. And then is like, but I've linked them so you can all see them. It's pretty, like deplorable behavior. So I don't, and like, again, we don't know quite the scope of how often this was happening from the sample size of videos that we did watch. I don't know, again, because he hasn't made any statement about it that I'm aware of or that you're aware of. I assume because he took these videos down and privated them, I would hope that he has reflected upon this and has been like, I shouldn't have done that, or like that was a bad take. I think it is worth mentioning that he was like 21 at the time. It's still bad, but you know, given that Phil has like a almost 20-year career on YouTube, there is obviously, I believe there's like room for maturing and redemption. Like there are some YouTubers who might stand by those takes or whatever, but clearly by hiding them, he either thinks they're embarrassing but maybe still holds those opinions, or he doesn't hold those opinions anymore and that's why he's removed them, but he's not addressed it to any
and like
degree.
At the time, you know, like your TMZs, your tabloid media would report on these leaks and stuff, but I think leaking to the actual leaked photos is like so far beyond what was even accepted in like 2007.
And tabloid culture was pretty like rotted and pretty evil.
Definitely the blame, like the victim blaming, that's like something that would have
common.
Been, even in like bigger publications. But certainly if they included the images, they at least would have been blurred and they wouldn't link to the source of the leaks. Yeah,
it was pretty crazy. I think my like jaw was agape for the period of this video. I was like, that is so crazy.
Especially, because I thought he was just going to, and the other stuff in the video is very much like he's just talking about like the news of the day. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, like he does news and he does pop culture. But then this was like, whoa. And it is kind of, you're like, wow, yeah, the internet was actually even
so hostile.
Exactly. Maybe it's improved. Maybe we should look at this as a sign of how far things have
think
come.
the fact that he was considered a mainstream popular YouTuber.
And a YouTube darling. Like YouTube, the platform, collaborated with him.
Yeah. I think considering that, then I would say there have been some strides in, like, we don't all get together as, like, the top YouTubers of a platform and be like, actually slut shaming is fine and funny. So that is definitely improvement, but I think there are still corners of the internet that hold the same rhetoric. Obviously, it's just less spotlighted, which is a good thing. But yeah, some of these early videos were a rough watch. They weren't all that rough, but that one in particular was a bit challenging.
And obviously we didn't see it, but I'm sure if a fuller archive was present, we would find other similarly distasteful things.
It's hard to think that would be an outlier if that was one of 10 videos we watched. Yeah.
Anyway, so
rough start.
To close out the early Phil stuff, he is involved in like petty YouTube drama in this era.
This video was funny.
I was going to say, like, Phil is meant to be somewhat of a comedian. Do you think he's funny?
I think this video is funny.
Okay, but do you ever actually find Phil's gags or bits funny?
Like, I don't know. Is Joel McHale funny when he report? Okay, well,
yeah, I didn't laugh at all at anything Phil did. I don't think he's funny.
Let's talk about this video in particular.
Sure.
So this video, I don't know, and again, with the archive, they haven't always got the titles, but it's just like, old Philip DeFranco video. And it is him sitting on the bathroom floor in what appears to be a hotel, basically making like, and it's really hard because this is from like 2007. It's like a response video to someone who has like publicly called him out, being like, Philip DeFranco, and this is bogged. How do I explain this? Philip DeFranco had made a comment about this person in presumably one of his videos. This person then is like, Philip DeFranco, you are a main YouTuber. You have responsibility to not bully me. and then he makes this like apology video. It's like a pre-YouTube apology video, but it's like a fake out because he starts out being like, I'm sorry, you're right, I shouldn't bully you, and I'm sorry that you suck, and I'm sorry that I'm 21 and you're in your 30s and you're like a loser. And it's basically like that type of vibe. But then there's also like kind of random, it's like he's like gonna go beat him up, or he's made threats to beat Philip DeFranco up.
He talks about physically fighting these people when he goes to New York.
I just think it's really funny because he references himself as being a popular YouTuber in 2007. And I'm like, this is like meta YouTube beef, potentially one of the earliest occurrences. Like, we see YouTube beef on YouTube all the time now of people making call-out videos and drama stuff, which we'll cover in future episodes. I know everyone's excited for Dramageddon. But, yeah, seeing that in this instance, I just thought it was funny. It was like, I don't know.
Maybe it says something to drama being intrinsic to YouTube as a platform.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll always find drama in any community. Like in Facebook groups, people will get in fights and arguments and people will be ousted and start a new thing. But because YouTube is a video hosting platform, they're all still there. And so, I don't know. I guess I'm sorry to listeners if this was difficult for us to describe, but I just needed to talk about Philip DeFranco, a 21-year-old Philip DeFranco getting in beef with like seemingly someone who did not reach the same level of success.
We watched a compilation that someone compiled of like best of Philip DeFranco bits, and I just made some notes because I was like, what did the person that created this video think?
They're like,
the
this
best
rocks.
Things? Yeah, well, like he slayed with this, and it's a compilation, and it's basically his jokes, and they are in order primarily he does one which is about racism. Which, you know, Philip DeFranco handling race, you can imagine how that went. He does a very long bit about receiving bad head from a girl, like a hot girl, where she uses lots of teeth. This was a real struggle as well.
Yep.
There's a series where it's like the target's like, it's like Mexicans, swine flu, poor people, and we kind of, I think we got the vibe from the video at this point and stopped watching. But it was yeah.
He refers to women as like their hair color. Like he's not like this hot girl. He's like this blonde, which is so like a relic of like, I guess, frat boy speak from the 2000s. I was like, can you imagine if anyone said that today? Was like, so I went out with this brunette. Yeah, it's like, who is she? Like, say her name. Like, crazy work. Yeah.
Me in my phone, and it's just like all these different women, and it's just their appearance. Yeah.
Ew.
And we watched one more early archived Philip DeFranco show where he went into great detail about a like this viral news story at the time about a teenager who made a false rape accusation.
Yeah.
Well, not an accusation, but she basically emerged and said she had been, sexually assaulted by a group of men, and naturally that caused like a big media storm about that, and it turns out that she fabricated the events that she reported, and Phil is really, I would say, he's very much like, isn't it crazy how there's all of these false rape accusations, and if I knew someone in college, I would be buying him a breathalyzer because any woman that he has sex with has the potential to be like...
This was a really weird take from him.
Well, I think it's kind of common in conservative circles at the time, but yeah, it's like...
It's interesting because I don't know if Philip DeFranco considered himself at that time to be conservative, and I don't even know if he thought this was like a conservative take, but the take was basically like, if you know a young man in college, you should buy them he was like, my friends have kids in college and I'll buy them this like breathalyzer thing so that before they take a girl home, she can like blow into it so that they're both aware of their alcohol level, and they'll like take a photo of it and make her sign and I see that shit online. Sorry, pardon my language. I see that shit online where guys are like, get a girl to like sign a like a contract to say that she consents. And it's like, but if she's like tipsy and she's signing it, then she's also like, it's so like weird in every way. Like, because the outcome of this case was that they were both consenting, or like they were both drunk. So it was not a case of like one person was intoxicated, one was not. That was the outcome of the case. But Philip DeFranco is kind of like, if you're going to be, you know, having sex with a person who's intoxicated, like, just make them sign something. And I'm like, but they're still intoxicated. Like, it's still signing a contract while you're intoxicated doesn't mean that contract's it was just so odd. And maybe I'm misinterpreting what he's saying, but it was a very weird. And there's a bit of a focus that I think we'll talk about potentially later in the episode, but he does like have a bit of this fixation on like false accusations. And like,
I would say this is just one of many examples where Phil, despite the fact that he repeatedly will be like, the mainstream media is untrustworthy, Phil simply recirculates existing reporting from news outlets uncritically, and by doing that spreads harmful like messaging, basically. Like, he is an unaware propagandist, which is like very rich coming from someone who is always going at great lengths to distance himself from the mainstream media, which is itself a dog whistle, by being like, what we're doing over here is like so much more trustworthy than what they do in the, you know, the media elites. And that itself is like a very, it's a political message that has found great sympathy in conservative circles in recent years.
Yeah,
But he was so early to that. A trendsetter.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and like we'll talk about some of his more like modern stuff because this was still in that earlier period. Because I think we will highlight some examples of, I would say, prominent work he's done that we can speak more to potentially having done good things. But yeah, some of this early stuff, I would just say it's like, I don't know. I'm just like, why would you do that?
He backs this segment up about false rape accusations with the lady of the day, where then he just talks about the hot girl of the day. It's
so like tone deaf. It's so, and I know that it's like very, it's very like of the time, like a Redditor type, like.
He was a libertarian at this time.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, this, I'm not saying there can't be like nuance in these discussions, but it's just more that he tends to take a certain stance that is, it's not like the most concerning version of that stance, but he repeatedly takes one where I'm like, continually being like, I really care about false accusations is a bit concerning to me, considering we know that the percentage of false accusations is so small. Like, to continually be like, this is a real issue. I'm not saying, you know, obviously false accusations are bad. Like, we all agree on that. But the amount of people, and he also used that rhetoric where it's like, well, false accusations make it difficult for like the real victims to come forward. But those sort of talking points are not unlike ones I've seen, again, coming from more conservative or like men's rights spaces.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes, early Philip DeFranco stuff was a bit of a tough watch. And considering at this time he was a YouTube darling, which I guess we'll talk about kind of what happened in, I guess we would call this like the dark period for us because we don't have any content from between like 2010 to 2015.
But we do, because of Phil's business savvy and the amount of fingers he had in many like YouTube digital business pies, we do have a fairly good idea of what he was up to at that stage. Because he entered the 2010s. Sexy Phil had the 5th most subscribers on YouTube, so he was a big star. And then he used that to create Maker Studios along with a bunch of other founders who I don't recognize, but you were like, oh, I know who these people are.
Well, one of them is Shay Carl, which you do know the channel.
Do I?
Yeah, Shay Carl. I don't like saying this.
Oh, the Shaytards. Yes. I have
like...
heard of the Shaytards in a negative sense.
Yeah.
I don't know
So-
anything about them. I just know they're a family vlog channel.
I just think it's interesting because there's a few people that Philly D, I guess, through business stuff associates with. I believe Toby Turner was another one, which is also not good from my recollection. And also like Shane Dawson. Like he's making business moves. The main one being Maker Studios, which he is a co-founder of along with like 9 other people or something. It's a bit of a kind of organized effort, which he leaves soon after. But Maker Studios was one of the biggest multi-channel networks on YouTube and was later purchased by Disney and became like the Disney digital network. So it was a very like mainstream family-friendly network, which maybe that's why Phil left pretty soon in. Because
Do you know if they made money
Maker Studios? Or
when they sold to Disney?
good cue. Unsure.
Okay.
I would assume
You'd think you get a
yes.
bag, but
You think you get the bag, but I think it could be that I'm not entirely certain. They could have had some type of agreement where they weren't like execs in running the company, but they got, because in a multi-channel network, you are part of this network, and we've discussed it previously, briefly, with Smosh. You're part of a network where rather than you getting paid by YouTube, like through AdSense to you first, the AdSense is paid to your MCN and the MCN pays you and they take a cut. But as part of that and being an MCN, they are kind of like an agency, like they're putting you forward for sponsorships and partnerships. So people as part of Maker Studios would get really big partnerships with like big mainstream brands. It was like, it's sort of like being an agency. But obviously, like we talked about with Smosh, the dangers of an MCN is if your MCN goes under, your channel and your revenue is like basically held hostage.
Should clarify that with the Smosh, it wasn't so much they're in an MCN, it's that they sold the channel.
Yes.
Michelle Phan had an MCN. What was it called? Fawn.
Fawn,
right?
and then it became Icon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So MCNs are a bit of like, I would say a bit of a relic of YouTube. They still exist, but it's just not a thing, and they have such a negative reputation among creators because of these instances where like their money gets tied up or they lose access to their channel, they like lose ownership to things that people just generally advise to not join them. But for younger or smaller creators who are looking for opportunity, it is like,
I mean, it seems to me that they're just done informally now, where like if you're member 8 of the Sidemen, like KSI doesn't own your channel, but if you left the Sidemen, chances are you're going to get like a 10th of the viewers, right? Or same with all the hype houses and like the David Dobrik crew. I hear about all these like YouTube crews, and it's like one famous person and then all these like hanger-ons and affiliates.
Yeah, I think you could put it like that, although I would say MCNs have a bit more of like an evil corporate energy, because it's like corporates who don't potentially even like YouTube, who just want a slice of the pie. Like they're like, oh, we'll do all this work for you that you can't do because like we have all these contacts. And that may be true in a sense, and they can like connect you with like production companies and all those things. So like it, it's like any agency, like it could be worth it, but
there is a definite, and it's something that is very similar in like indie music spaces on YouTube because of like the DIY roots of the platform, where it seems that lots of OG and early YouTubers and fans of those YouTubers like hate advertising, signing to an agency, selling out, any sort of thing that is like a barrier between them and the creator, even if it's like something where that creator will be like, well, this is a great opportunity and I don't make a lot of money doing this. Like there's all these business considerations, but the fans are always like, no. Or they're like, when people, and like someone like Phil who eventually repurchases all his assets when they're acquired by a corporation, everyone is like, congratulations, Phil. Like, it's so good to be free.
Yeah. Similar with Smosh. Everyone was so excited for Smosh to repurchase their channel. I would say is more of like a meta conversation about YouTube. Anything where viewers perceive that YouTube is being used by the creator as like a stepping stone on the path to somewhere else, I would say there's a bit of resentment. So like there are a lot of YouTubers who use it as a path to become an actor or to become a singer. And I think you really have to like basically like nail that marketing strategy or really have trust with your viewers. We will talk about some early YouTubers who went on to pursue like late night TV and like
Like
acting,
as comics or as...
like as hosts.
Oh,
Like they want, yeah,
okay.
yeah. And it did not go down well. In fact, it went down like the Titanic. It went really, like the reception was horrific.
Tosh? Was Tosh a YouTuber? Or was he on TV
think
first?
so. I know who I'm talking about, and I don't think you know who they are.
All
But
right, we'll get there.
it clearly went so poorly that it did not make. It's like they were like, I'm going to leave YouTube. I'm bigger than this, and I'm going to break into mainstream. And then it didn't go well. And it was like, yeah. So it's a bit of a thing. But Philly D has always been like, YouTube is the place. He has always kind of hedged his bets on YouTube. And I think YouTube as a community as a whole rewards and respects creators who stay loyal to the platform. And it does play into that sense of like anti-mainstream media. Like he's like, I don't want to go and be on a TV network because this is the new TV network. Actually, you know who is a big proponent of that?
Who?
Monsieur Beast.
Mr.
Jimmy
Beast.
Beast. Yeah, he's like YouTube's
But
future.
he's on Amazon.
Well,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, that didn't
Yeah,
last long.
but he is like, YouTube is like pioneering in entertainment.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like we're getting a little...
I will pull us back. Phil's loyalty to YouTube is rewarded because they approach him to create an original channel as part of they threw like 100 million at popular creators to make offshoots of their main channels.
Yeah.
So he created SourceFed, which is basically a similar news and current events channel to his main Philip DeFranco Show, but SourceFed had like rotating hosts and could cover topics in much longer detail than he did on the Philip DeFranco Show.
Yeah.
Originally, he did try and do SourceFed on his channel.
He
but
tried to do
yeah.
multiple videos a day, like cutting each story
Yeah.
into its own video as opposed to doing the like 20-minute wrap up.
But the viewers didn't like
They
it.
did not like it.
And we know anything about YouTubers, when the views go down, they're not happy.
No.
So he cut it off to its own thing, and it lived for a few years. I think it shut around 2017.
It ran for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was an offshoot as well, which was like SourceFed Nerd,
Yeah.
which was like their, I guess,
The gaming vertical.
gaming vertical. Gaming and like comics and TV nerd vertical.
Talking gaming, we should do the Philip DeFranco, the catchphrase.
Sup, you beautiful bastards. Hope you have had a fantastic Thursday.
Oh yeah, would you like to do your best impression?
The phrase, he's like, sup, you beautiful bastards.
Shall I try?
Yeah, you can try.
Sup, you beautiful bastards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Or he'll
that was
do
alright.
he'll do the beautiful bastards has become literally his t-shirt brand.
It's like, oh my gosh, he does wear these. I don't
Millennial.
Think, yeah, look,
Yeah.
graphic t-shirts. I love a graphic t-shirt. I can't hate, but I mean, you're wearing a graphic t-shirt. Millennial ass.
No, but this is intellectual property. Whereas he wears what I've
It's the Philip
described
DeFranco intellectual property.
as humor shirts. And the prominent one we watched when we were seeing the show is it just says sports, exclamation mark. And he's like, this is what you wear when people are being excited about the sports ball.
Why
and you're
are you
like,
making
I
him
don't know
sound like the
sports ball.
Joker? Your impression of Philip DeFranco is like borderline like, and what if I got a ball and I chased the ball?
That's how I perceive him. But yeah, his whole thing is like, yeah, because you don't know what sport is because like you're cool, so you
You're a
wear the
nerd.
sports shirt and that will show those fucking jocks. But yeah,
14-year-old Lucy would lap that up.
yeah, and so
I'd
it's
be like,
all
chess is a thought sport.
the shirts are all the cringe millennial type humor.
They're very of the time. I don't think
No,
they
they're
exist
still
in
selling them. People still wear that stuff.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, lots of YouTubers sold fugly
Yeah,
shirts.
it's kind of like, but these are not specific. Like some are Phil coded, but a lot of them are just general like cringe.
We could
nerd
actually do
shirts.
a ranking YouTuber shirts episode. That can be like a holiday special.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that lost to time
No, I feel
because they don't sell them anymore.
No.
Because they're just on Teespring.
yeah, they're really they're pretty ugly. But
Now we are entering the bright, as in the light period of Phil history where the videos have not been deleted, which is good for us because I would say that around 2017, after Phil repurchases his assets from Discovery, actually owned them under a subsidiary.
crazy.
Yeah. Like all the YouTubers, they return all the big media were like, we're going to get into YouTube, and they're like, oh, actually, there's no money here, and then they all left and went
Or they
back to
just want a
DIY.
slice of the pie, and they're like, actually, we should make it something completely different, or like you should do it like this, and it's like maybe not always,
Some would
but
say
I do.
maybe they were sold a pie by YouTube, and then when they all changed how much money you earn and the pie got substantially smaller, all these companies were actually kind of duped. But
I also
hey.
think there is a case of like they have a fundamental, I think still around this time in 2017, there was a fundamental misunderstanding of like what makes YouTubers popular and like what makes that content succeed. And their idea of like, well, let's try and like gloss it up and make it more like mainstream media. It's like, that's not why it's popular. Like I do, well, I don't necessarily agree with like that we have to be skeptical of the mainstream media. Like, yeah, media literacy is good. But in terms of like YouTube holding its own as its own medium and having that popularity with a younger audience, it's classic, like, you know, the boomer mainstream media, the virgin mainstream media to the Chad YouTube.
Yep.
They just don't get what makes it successful, and it's usually best, the creative control is best kept in the creator's hands.
I want to touch on the big post 2017 Philip DeFranco storylines, in that Phil started covering YouTube drama a lot more, and a common meme is that he would always use prominent YouTubers in his thumbnails as clickbait, and people would count how many times he used particular YouTubers, PewDiePie being number one YouTuber, being used the most amount of times. But in 2017, he did a sort of expose, which is kind of unlike a lot of Phil's stuff, because he does primarily just cover, you know, existing stories.
News stories. Yeah.
But he goes and does sort of a deep dive on the YouTube channel Daddy of 5.
I do want to put a little bit of a content warning in here, because we have obviously discussed things in this episode so far, but this story that we'll be touching on is about like child abuse.
Yes.
And it's pretty unpleasant. Like just watching the videos was quite confronting and uncomfortable. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend, if you want to skip forward in the time codes.
Yeah, we'll chapter out.
Yeah,
where we'll stop.
Yeah, we won't be going into depth into it, but like,
Yes.
yeah.
So Daddy of 5 is a family vlog channel where the content includes, you know, typical family vlog stuff, but also there is a emphasis on prank videos, which are popular at the time. But what Phil identifies is that the pranks that this channel are doing basically amount to them abusing the children in the family.
And in particular, targeting like one of their
Yes.
children. Like most.
Yeah. And so it's a combination of like, they scream at this child, they physically hit the child, they encourage the other kids to hit
And like gang
the
up on
younger
the child.
kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's actually watching this, and they had like over 100,000 subscribers. Like, it's a popular channel. Watching this was like so upsetting. Like,
Yeah.
and these people continued to exist on YouTube in one form of another until very recently. YouTube does shut the channels down after a period of time, but Phil basically made this video, and following that, there was a lot of mainstream awareness of the channel, and eventually it led to the two of the children in question being taken away from the parents that run the channel, and they also were convicted of child abuse charges in court. So about 6 months later.
Yeah. So this story, and I remember this being news at the time. I remember seeing this covered on YouTube, and I probably have actually watched the Philip DeFranco stories. He does make several videos about it because he's the primary person. He's kind of like the first to cover this story. Not that he's the only person to cover it or the first to cover it, but like the first with a larger platform to cover it. And yeah, like you said, it had not been picked up in mainstream media at all. And it's like, you know, a public, it's like on YouTube, like multiple examples of child abuse. And after the initial video, people dig through the channel and find more and more evidence. And we've seen that happen in other cases, like more recently. Like, I don't know if you know anything about 8 Passengers or
Nope.
Ruby Frankie. So this is this is not the only
Are
time.
they like family vloggers?
Yeah. So
Yeah. Guys, I have a tremendously negative impression of family vloggers, and I'm sure we will watch them at some point. We can elaborate on that. But I have a very dim view of people that basically monetize their children.
yeah, I think there are not many instances where people are incorporating or including their children in their content where I would not consider it exploitation.
Yeah. There's one exception, the Aussie Bro Squad.
You are joking, right?
I'm joking, yeah. But
I feel technically they're TikTokers, so I feel like we won't get to cover them.
alas.
Yeah, I think family vloggers generally I am extremely skeptical of as well. I am not a viewer of family vloggers. I think the only time I watch like what I would call family content is when vloggers I follow
Had kids.
like have had kids.
Yep.
But even then, the ones I tend to continue watching either really minimally include their children or actually don't show their children at all and actually more speak to their experiences of being a parent. But like it's like family vlogs just in general are like just a breeding ground for like just abuse of power and like child abuse, like literally. But in cases like Daddy of Five, it becomes a vehicle to, I guess, encourage the parents to, just do like, I don't know. Like do you know what I mean? Like the reactive and like having these like kids having meltdowns and stuff gets them views and money. And so they're incentivized.
And it gets YouTube money, which is kind of one of my core criticisms, I would say, of YouTube, in that it is so, and all social media is like this basically, but they are so intentionally lax in their content moderation.
Because they're complicit.
Yes. They are free to make money from this, and then as soon as it becomes like a media issue, like a reputational one, they act. But before then, if no one had said anything, they would just be like, how were we to know that there was child abuse in the videos that we host and sell ads on our
and that
service?
people report to the platform being like, hey, there's child abuse in this video, and it takes them like months to take action. There's certainly something to be said there. I do think they would be more quickly demonetized, and I know now on YouTube they have since put in policies about like the kind of advertising that can run.
Yeah, I believe also, and I'm not sure how it's enforced, but they say that children in content should basically, the content should be produced in keeping with local child labor laws. YouTube Kids also is a whole new ecosystem. So YouTube has responded to concerns about kids watching YouTube and kids being used in YouTube content. But yeah, anyway, as this example says, there's still a long way to go. But we were pretty negative on Phil up until this point, but
we didn't have an amazing impression of his journalistic skills.
Phil is not a journalist.
But in this, we were kind of like, he's kind of giving journalism.
I actually was like, yes. Like, someone who's like, he is very critical of journalists. I was like, well, Phil, it's good that you actually went out and with your team did some journalism here. It's a shame that it's like one of like a 10 million videos you made and the rest you just profit off other people's work.
Well, we don't know.
You slayed on this one, Phil.
But I do think we should mention that he does have, and something I don't know if we've really discussed, but Phil says that he likes to present the facts and like the objective truth, which is such a kind of interesting statement because it's like no one is free from bias.
Yes.
Like,
but so many journalists
claim it's like any publication, every publication is owned by someone.
Yeah.
Every journalist has their own background and opinions. Like there is nothing, I personally am like, there's no such thing as being free from bias. If a person is writing content, like if a journalist is a person, and even if it's like AI and they're taking it from like, do you know what I mean? Like you can't be free from bias. You don't exist in a vacuum. You're a product of your like life.
One of my main contentions with journalism and like disclosure, I used to work for one of Australia's main news publications.
And you have a journalism degree.
Yeah. And even in the even working as a journalist, I would say overwhelmingly the majority of journalists think that their opinion is free from bias. Like in most recent Australian polling, it's something like only 20% of journalists concede that their reporting has some level of bias. And that's reported as like people being like, I can't believe that there's 20% of journalists that are biased. And it's like, no, literally every single thing has a bias of one degree or another. And it is like such a, like basically a facade that even our public broadcaster, the ABC, has a doctrine of impartiality, which is just like so laughable when you think about it. Like, of course, like a government agency has a position in like in relation to all sorts of things that it reports on. Like it's impossible for it to be impartial, and actually not addressing the biases explicitly makes it like more deceiving. So anyway, we got on a tangent there, but yeah, Phil DeFranco is a big like I'm impartial.
I'm
guy.
impartial.
Yeah.
I just present the facts to the people.
No bias, no spin.
No bias, and I let people and I encourage people to use me as a jumping off point to seek out, you know, further information and sources. And like, sure, maybe that second part you can say I'm meant to be like an easy entry point into the news for people to then find out more. I don't know if I disagree with that. I think that's a fine thing to say. Is like I'm a, you know, a light, like I'm a easily digestible source of news, and then people can go and find out more if that's something they're curious on. But yeah, you can watch like 20 minutes of Philip DeFranco every other day and maybe get a sense of like what's happening.
Yeah.
Question mark. Sure.
I mean, honestly, like the TV news operates in a similar way. Like there's like there are journalists obviously, but for the most part, TV news is just recycling existing reporting, whether that be from like a news agency or other media outlets where they just take a summary.
Yeah.
Phil's doing the same thing, you know?
Yeah. But so he says, I don't have any bias and that's how I do it. But it really, there's something odd that I've noticed. And again, we weren't able to watch like every single video. So I can't be like, this is the amount it happens or this is the percentage of times that it happens. But he invariably gives his opinion on topics. I think he's done it less in recent years, but certainly in early videos, he would give his like editorial opinion on that particular topic. And he doesn't do it as much now. But it's something to mention because he makes this big deal of it, but then equally, and we'll talk about one topic in particular, which I thought was particularly cursed and he had a particularly bad take. But yeah, he kind of like picks and chooses when he wants to give his editorial opinion, which I guess is fine. But again, it's like that case of like, well, do you only present facts or do you like you can't, you know what I mean? Like imagine if a newsreader was like, and that's the top stories for today. Also, I think that person is dumb. It's like, okay, I don't know. It's fine if you want to give your opinion, but I think he sort of presents it like
he wants to have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah. But to return and kind of cap off this really big story that I do think he did a really good job of, and he did raise awareness for what was like a really concerning issue. Again, like, yeah, these videos were like really disturbing and harrowing. But Phil does have a personal connection to the subject matter at hand, which he does delve into a bit in his also private, but someone had re-uploaded his Draw My Life, where he does explain that he came from a background where he had been abused. And the Draw My Life is, he kind of skates over it in like a similarly comedic style that he presents all his videos in, but he skates over like what seemed to be some pretty traumatic events.
He does allege that one of his mother's ex-boyfriends attempted to kill Phil and his mum by carbon monoxide poisoning. Yes. Which I don't think is a joke. Well, I was presented in a somewhat comedic way.
Yeah, he presents
it would
this
be a crazy thing to
I think he's being so serious. Yeah. And it's pretty, like, I was watching this and I was like, Jesus, like, holy cow. And he kind of talked through his, like, early childhood as being quite disrupted and kind of scary. And then he's like, you know, and then I became a YouTuber and I met my wife and everything's all good. And, you know, that's fantastic. And I'm, you know, really glad that he obviously was able to escape from that situation. But I think it's something to mention that clearly he and he does say this in the video, which is still up, where he's like, I feel a personal connection to this story because, I feel like no one's intervening and I wish that someone had intervened in, my situation. I thought that was quite, I don't know. I think it's something to mention. He was like personally incensed and like moved by this, and, I think it's some of his best work that he does on his channel. And I think there's something to that.
Yeah. Following from his best work. Phil covered fallout from VidCon 2017. VidCon is, from my understanding, like the big convention for YouTubers.
It's
right?
like it's the first convention for YouTubers. I will say 2017 is like the biggest year for Philip DeFranco's channel ever. Like to this day, the covering of the Daddy of Five situation were his most viewed videos. They're all in the top like 10 on his channel. Like, something like that. And then this also, I think, was quite highly viewed. Yep. Also in 2017. And then there's another situation we'll talk about briefly, which was also in 2017. So
basically, the only thing to break 2017's strangle on like his top videos, and it was still 4 years ago, is he covered some David Dobrik stuff.
Yes.
That reached those levels. But otherwise, if you look at his popular stuff on his channels, it's all the 2017 stuff, uses the same YouTube background and has the YouTube creators, and it's covering YouTube drama.
Yeah. So his most popular content ever is YouTube centric, and he, spoiler alert, has now moved to more, I would say, like mainstream news, like political coverage. Yep. But yeah, I just wanted to say, because I feel like we're really 2017 centric, but it is because it's the most popular content on his channel.
Yeah. And it's the earliest stuff that basically uploaded.
Yeah. So VidCon, created by Hank and John Green, which we will do an episode about soonish. Yeah. Because they're quite
I know about John Green because of The Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah.
I know he is like a YA author. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of it. I have not read A Fault in Our Stars. I am familiar with it through its place in culture.
Yeah.
I imagine I would not enjoy it, but
I think I've read I think I read quite a few of his books, but nonetheless.
You were in the core demo at the time.
I was.
He was writing. So
I followed him on Tumblr. Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it'll be a good ep. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Look. Anyway, VidCon. So at the time, there is a social and political sort of movement online called Gamergate. A very brief summation of Gamergate. I knew about Gamergate because I am a gamer.
Everyone clap.
But it basically was targeted harassment at mainly women academics and games journalists. And it's a conspiracy theory that, and it's not a defined movement. So I'll give a summation of what I think it is. It's about people thinking that diversity and diversity is being pushed into video games by shadowy forces, and it's making the games worse.
Yeah, I would just say...
Is that your understanding?
I would say that Gamergate is basically the movement equivalent of the statement, GF, go make me a sandwich while I play Call of Duty. Like, it's basically... They would be like, it's about ethics in games journalism, but it's actually about they don't want women in games because they perceive gaming to be a male space, that women are like trying to take over and make shit, which is...
Yes.
I mean, sorry. Yeah, maybe I'm editorializing here. Gamergate was like a scourge on the internet. And
it's still something like an ethos that you see today.
Insane meninist cookers. Sorry.
It's now just become though like Game X is woke.
Yeah, it's like anti-social justice warriors like using pictures of women who have dyed hair being like these and it's like, again, slut shaming. This is such a fun episode. Everything's so fun. I love covering the news. Maybe this is how Philip DeFranco feels.
Though.
Yeah, imagine being Phil after covering this. But actually, like, I'm like, I find talking about Gamergate like distressing and discouraging being a woman who enjoys video games. And I remember at the time being like, Gamergate is such a bad vibe because like I'm a girl who enjoys video games and I'm seeing all these men being like, women suck and I hate them. And I hate that there's like a female protagonist of this video game because it's like woke and shit and like blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like all that stuff.
All this context
right.
will be paid off here. But Gamergate the central figure was an academic. Her name was Anita Sarkeesian. She's still, a public figure and writes about sort of women in popular media. And she had a blog and she would write about, at the time, I believe it was like the tropes of female characters in popular video games. Like, this is all like stuff that is like so normal within like coverage of the arts in academia.
Totally.
Yeah. But basically it elicited a huge online response from like all of these commentators, especially like popular video game creators, where they were like, we hate this work, you are wrong. And it led to like years of targeted harassment for her and people that defended her.
Yeah, and other female creators were kind of put into the same. Basically, any woman who had an opinion about video games was kind of thrown into the fiery pit of harassment. So Anita Sarkeesian had a panel at VidCon, which was herself and some other like associates, other commentators in the space.
The panel specifically was about online harassment towards women.
Yeah, which she is very well versed to speak on. And again, the owners of VidCon, or like the organizers of VidCon at this point, were John and Hank Green. Later on, they don't own VidCon and they're not involved in the same way, but at this time they were. So they obviously approved this panel and were like, yep, let's go, put the programming. And I think it's worth noting that John and Hank Green, while they don't necessarily continue to run VidCon and own VidCon, I'm a bit fuzzy on those details, but at this point they were. So this programming was approved by them. And you actually knew who this man.
So a bunch of people critical of Anita Sarkeesian and generally, I would say, pro-Gamergate figures, they got tickets to VidCon either personally or they like forged their identity to get in, and they sat in the front row of the panel and filmed Anita Sarkeesian, and she, during the panel, singled out one of them. His name is Carl Benjamin. His YouTube sort of handle is Sargon of a Card. And I knew of him because I am aware of him through like coverage of Gamergate and general far right online sentiment. Yep. And she was like, I hate to give you attention because you're a garbage human. So Sarkeesian said that, and then as a result, Sargon, Carl Benjamin, went online and said that I have been abused by a panelist at VidCon.
She's harassed me.
I've been harassed. That is in breach of the laws, the bylaws of VidCon.
Terms of like service and whatever, which obviously every convention has their rules of,
She was like, he was like, is she going to be punished for breaking these rules? Philip DeFranco covers all of this in the Philip DeFranco Show. And this is an example where he covers it and then he gives his
personal
opinion on it. Yes. He is like, basically, Anita broke these rules and he seems confused as to why she isn't punished for this. He also is confused by the response from Hank and John Green, because they later said that the behavior of this group of opponents of Anita was basically intimidating. Like, they intentionally went to the panel and staked it out to film and harass her. Yeah. And it is something that they had been doing for years. It's just not like it was an isolated incident.
Yeah, they know the context.
Exactly. And they were like, we didn't really and I can't really blame them for this, because obviously it's tough to be across all of the various dramas and attendees at a huge convention.
Yeah, this is like a VidCon where they're also debuting Joey Graceffa's Escape the Night. And this I remember this being quite a historic VidCon of many levels of drama. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it's like, when your conference is about YouTube, can you really be like, no filming panels? Which is a common rule at many panels, but they're like...
That's Philip DeFranco's, also his I guess defense, or his point is obviously, so we know from the context, these guys are filling up the rows, they're filming. Anita knows who these people are. They've made many videos about her, basically being very disparaging towards her, encouraging targeted harassment towards her. She, obviously, and for people not familiar with panels, they would all be sitting there and then the panelists come in. So they wouldn't have seen them before they go out. So she would go out, sit down and see basically a bunch of bullies who she knows who hate her sitting at the front row of her panel, which is about being harassed online by those exact people.
Yeah.
So yeah, contextually we're but Philip DeFranco is it's not against the rules of for a YouTuber to go to a panel about YouTube to film for a YouTube video about another YouTuber. He's allowed to have his own opinions. And it's kind of crazy because it's
he just completely ignores the context of this specific situation.
She's been doxxed.
He's so he refuses to consider that there shouldn't be a blanket acceptance that anyone can attend any panel at any time.
He's not the way that Philip DeFranco is discussing it is in people are allowed to have disagreements. And it's no one's saying that you can't disagree with someone. We're saying you can't do a targeted harassment campaign and dox someone and basically stress them out. I wouldn't be surprised if there were police reports about him. I'm not 100% sure, obviously, alleged details. I'm not going to say anything because we don't 100% know. But do you know what I mean? It's so different to just, sorry, I'm getting annoyed. I just think it's ridiculous to be because it's downplaying what she's been through. It's kind of why is she making a big deal about it? He's allowed to do it. And he's right. She did break the terms of service by calling him a dummy or a trash bag or whatever. And
he spends way more time in the video detailing the language that she uses towards them
in this instance at VidCon
than anything that they have done to her for years at this point, or any of the wider ramifications.
I would actually argue that this guy, what is it, Carl of
Sargon of Akkad,
Gabagool, yeah, sure, him. He probably was violating YouTube's terms of service in terms of harassing her repeatedly. I would not, and maybe not at the time, but certainly now, repeatedly making content harassing someone is against terms of service. So it's very, very odd. And then he makes a follow-up responding to Hank and John, who have made a statement basically being yeah, look, technically she did make a statement that is against our, VidCon's policy, but also we didn't know the full context. They clearly were doing something to anyone would find that intimidating and that is harassing behavior. And they also kind of imply that, yeah, we weren't aware of the situation, and had we known that, we would have had security measures in place to not let them do that to her because she was put in a position where she was uncomfortable. And they're kind of basically we would do that too if we were her, but we don't encourage her to do it, but you can so see why she did. And they obviously don't ban her from future events. Or
I am shocked, and I'll read what Anita wrote on her blog. She said that she's referring to Sargon here. She says, he makes over $5,000 a month on Patreon for creating YouTube videos that mock, insult, and discredit myself and other women online. He's not alone. He's one of several YouTubers who profit from the cottage industry of online harassment and anti-feminism. And Phil is well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Should you be allowed to do
that? And I should
that?
mention in the follow-up video, he does double down. He's I think what Hank and John have done here is a weak move.
Exactly.
And I'm what? They're literally being they're apologizing to Anita. They're basically being Anita, we are sorry this happened to you. Obviously, yes, we don't want you, any of our panelists to yell at people in the audience, but low key, you are fine for that. Knowing what happens, we don't care. And Phil is fully being Hank and John, you're kind of a weak for doing this. You shouldn't have done this. You should really take action, blah, blah, blah. And fucking, sorry, pardon my language. You can tell I'm incensed. Carl of Sargon, whatever, Gabagool, Monstro, is in the comments being Phil, you're a real one. My bestie. Thank you for being a shining light in free speech, XX. And I'm this is a bad look. It's a bad vibe. I don't like it. Sorry, everyone.
Well, on free speech, so yeah, final 2017 big video saga, and this one actually returns because it's ongoing, is Phil and his coverage of the PewDiePie antisemitism controversy.
Yeah, and kind of links into like the adpocalypse and all of that, which again is, yeah. I remember at the time there were some news articles, again, like by mainstream media, and not that I agree with Philip DeFranco because we don't have the same take, but there is a case of like journalists writing about YouTube who don't understand YouTube and being like, he made in another video blog. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing, like trying to write about a subject matter that you fundamentally don't understand. So there's definitely that element.
Hey, I would, when you're a journalist, you have to write about everything under the sun. One would argue there's nothing you understand.
Yeah, no, I mean, but equally, like, if you're going to write a story and it's like not, it's a misrepresentation of.
So PewDiePie.
Yeah.
So at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I remember, he paid some men on Fiverr to display various offensive things because he was like, well, what can I get away with?
How far can you push it? Yeah.
And I believe he said, one of them, it said...
We should not say that.
Okay, we can't say it.
No.
It
was
contains
extremely
an anti-Semitic slogan, right? And this resulted in a huge amount of fallout for him. Am I correct? He lost... YouTube basically cut ties with him.
Yes.
Mainstream media
they were
condemned him significantly.
Saying he was like a Nazi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they were saying he was a Nazi, but they certainly said he was anti-Semitic.
I think they were also saying that he was like alt-right, potentially.
Yeah.
Well,
let's not litigate PewDiePie here, except for the fact that Philip DeFranco was not alone. He was among many YouTubers who backed PewDiePie.
And I would say most YouTubers did because it felt like kind of what we were discussing before, like mainstream media is like, look at YouTube, it's so bad.
Yeah.
And so YouTubers are obviously going to be defensive, and especially at this time I think PewDiePie probably was the number one YouTuber on the platform, or if not number one, very much in the top. He was everyone's golden boy. Everyone liked PewDiePie. Yeah,
so the video is titled Ridiculous MSM, which is like shorthand for mainstream media, which is, a dog whistle for independent media types. Mainstream MSM caught spewing garbage again. And he basically cherry picks some articles and points out that they basically get like small things wrong about either Felix's videos or his own videos, essentially. And he uses this, and the sources from memory, it's something like a Daily Mail online article, which AI didn't exist then, but this is like the next thing to basically an AI bot writing news. It's not like he's picking sources of note and the New York Times are writing about this and getting things wrong. He's picking like the lowest, cheapest tier online media and saying the facts are wrong here, and this is indicative of all mainstream media being distrustful.
It's been obviously a hot second. It's been like 8 years, but I do remember this discourse at the time. I think there is a level to which I do possess some empathy for YouTubers in being like, they cover us and like this is mainstream, like this is what, and when you think about it, being a YouTuber wasn't like, it was, I would say being a YouTuber was like recognized as being like a job and stuff at this time, but still considered like a lesser form. And probably still is today, but it's considered like a lesser form than mainstream media. And this would be like the kind of stuff where like this would be what would be sent to their like family members who don't understand what their job is. So, I think for like, it's like YouTubers are getting shit on and put into the same basket. He did make those videos though. Like,
yes,
he did do that.
Philip DeFranco would private a lot of these videos specifically relating to PewDiePie because, for those unaware, he would later go on to say the N-word with hard R in a heated gaming moment while playing PUBG online. And, say what you will about how it's interesting that the anti-Semitism incident, people are, they're standing up to defend him. But then once you have a context of like very specific American-focused racism, they all abandon him. But yeah, Phil has privated a number of these videos where he would defend PewDiePie. I have, from media coverage at the time, some quotes from what he had to say prior to the racism incident. He said, the media reaction makes them look silly and has added to the conversation of why media should not be trusted. And then he goes on to say, thanks to you and the media, the way that you all rush to cover without looking for context, you have made him, that's PewDiePie, the temporary face and put him front and center in the conversation of free speech. In the story of media trying to take down people for saying things they don't like or they think are offensive, the media will literally try and ruin your career if you make jokes about things that offend them, and you have only made him stronger and more important.
I mean, I don't agree with the overall sentiment, but the last statement in terms of making PewDiePie like more of a figurehead, I think that was true. I think everyone did back him in that initial case. I will say, are you aware of like contextually what was like the meta like of funny YouTube at the time? Like, do you know much about like iDubbbz?
I have no idea.
It was like edgy humor.
So just before that, I did want to point out the irony that at the time Phil is all like free speech, we're going to say things that offend you, la 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 la. And then he'd go on to private literally all of his videos. And
yeah,
I think his free speechism has maybe it's rescinded somewhat.
I think it's interesting that it's not clear as to why he privates the videos, because he hasn't spoken about it, again, to my knowledge. Like, maybe he has and we've missed it. But it's almost like he likes to, private instances of where he was like, had a bad take or was wrong.
Yep.
And I'm a bit like, that's like, news articles can't like delete newspapers they've published. Like, that's what being news is.
At least
like,
they should issue a correction.
Yeah, or a retraction, or, he could be like, hey, so I previously, stood up because I believe that, PewDiePie's video, he intended for it to be comedy. The jokes were not, like, the jokes were, like, anti-Semitic. Yep. They aren't really funny, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I think, he can talk about, like, I think, like, a la Dave Chappelle, which he actually does have this take where he's like, I think people are allowed to make offensive jokes. And you don't have to think they're funny.
I think we are both also of that opinion.
I don't.
Right?
Well, yeah, and like we can kind of go into it. And again, it's like there's been so much like, and PewDiePie's been wrapped up in so many different kind of levels of controversy over those like few years. But I do think it's like just say you were wrong, or just be like, yes, I stood on this opinion. I still think like I don't think it was fair of them to target him for that video in isolation, because they took it out of context of like what was considered YouTube humor at the time. Who are the other popular YouTubers? iDubbbz literally says the N-word in his content. Everyone thought that was extremely funny for a period of time. Like that was a meta on YouTube. So he is like part of it. And like, does that make it good? Does it make it bad? I'm not saying that, but it's like, yeah, sure, you can argue that they were taking that out of context, or the purpose of the video was to do outrageous things, and maybe they weren't like stating that in those articles. Like they were like, he just does this in a video because he thinks it's funny, as opposed to I'm doing this to like see what this website will allow me to do. Is there much of a difference in that? I don't know, but sure, you can have those arguments. But then you can be like, but I don't stand by the fact that he uses the N-word. Like, but he just doesn't. In this, in the video where he does, the video is still up, I think, where he covers this incident. He like doesn't do editorializing, I don't think. Or does he? I don't think he did. Maybe he did very much being like, yikes, the hard R, Felix. Ugh. And like, that's kind of it. But it's like, you did? Yeah.
I have just I don't have much time for the free speech YouTube thing, because it's very rare, I feel, that this leads to like the channel or videos being deleted, right? All it is monetization is turned off. They get demonetized. And I'm sorry, like, you may have like free speech, but you don't have the God-given right for YouTube to sell ads on your behalf against any content that you create. So the adpocalypse it did affect like more people than just PewDiePie. Just give some context what the adpocalypse is.
I don't have the exact details in front of me, but essentially the adpocalypse was ad revenue across YouTube going down because advertisers, for a multitude of reasons, in part related to this PewDiePie incident, decided they were not going to advertise on YouTube anymore. So they're not putting any ad spend into the AdSense YouTube partner program, being like, so like Coca-Cola was like, we are no longer running ads on YouTube. And obviously Coca-Cola would run a lot of ads on YouTube for a lot of different things. So basically the pool of money that is shared among creators are depleted significantly. So basically a lot of creators lost a quite significant chunk of their income. I think certain categories of YouTubers were more affected than others. So news, political events, gaming, I think were more affected. I think beauty, lifestyle, like family kind of, family-friendly channels were less affected. But still overall, basically every YouTuber and also a lot of YouTubers who were relying upon it for income lost money. Saw a downward spike in their ad revenue, which, yeah, it's pretty bad. It's basically been restored, to my understanding, to as before, like gradually over time, advertisers regain trust in YouTube and have come back to the platform. But yeah, it was a pretty big deal around the time.
And Phil has been quite vocal about like both these issues with creators making money and larger criticisms of YouTube in general, which, good for him.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, I mean, I think
it takes some courage when you're like, his whole media empire is completely beholden to YouTube.
Yeah.
To criticize the platform that he's on.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Won't catch me criticizing YouTube anytime soon.
We literally did in this episode.
No, we did not.
Yes, we did.
I don't really.
Really, in our discussion of the fact that they're complicit in family channels making money?
I would like to be feature creator of the month.
Okay, sure.
Anyway, so Phil has continued making the Philip DeFranco Show into the modern day. It's quite moderate compared to where we started at the beginning. Like, you're not getting Lady of the Day or links to like 18-year-olds leak nudes. Yeah. So good for Phil in that sense.
The format currently is the same as the original format, which is the mix of current affairs, news, like political news, a little bit of like a human interest story, something fun, a little uplifting, and then like tech and whatever, a bit of pop culture news. And he also does like the Today in Awesome segment, which is like also like feel good. Like it's like, look at this cool thing on Reddit.
I would describe watching the Phil DeFranco Show modern day as kind of like the Facebook algorithm of like a 50-year-old American.
Whoa.
You scroll, you get a bit of everything. Get a bit of the news, get a bit of human interest, but all at such surface level that I don't think you can say that you engaged like meaningfully with anything.
I think maybe that's a bit harsh, because I do think a lot of people are not connected to the news or current affairs at all. And I do think his early point, which I think still stands to a degree, is that he can serve as a easy entry point into news and current affairs for like a pretty general wide audience. No? You're like, he needs to bring back Hot Babe of the Day.
Yeah, I am just generally,
You won't be subscribing.
I don't really put a lot of stock in the idea that there are like gateway media products. And I don't think the Phil DeFranco Show is one. It's pretty hard for you to like watch the video, and I know that he includes sources in the links, but I think in the main, people basically, they get the story from his retelling of it. And I would say that's probably remains my main contention with Phil, is that he is very critical of news outlets and people that are actually putting in work to report these stories, when all he does is basically take that work and resell it where he makes the money. And he doesn't actually, to my mind, contribute much in sort of like transformational effort at all. Like,
yeah,
it's very easy to sit and criticize like we do here on this podcast, but we're not just word for word reading Phil DeFranco and occasionally like speaking about like, oh, that was kind of crazy. Like, we are doing a whole transformational work on this. Whereas Phil just reads the article or the headline and then basically either says nothing, or he uses the vision from the TV stations, but he doesn't like, he's not out there on the field doing journalism, you know?
But you're ignoring the fact that he incorporates this thing, which is where he passes it off to you. He does audience interaction. He's like, so anyway, this person did this reprehensible thing, but I want to know, well, like, he literally does it with the Anita Sarkeesian thing. He's like, but I want to know what you think. Do you think she should be banned from VidCon, and it's like, bruh. But yeah, it's not. That's transformational. He's starting a discussion.
Yeah.
I'm being a little...
He's like a Trump guy. I'm sorry, he's not
Whoa.
voting for Trump. He's like an anti-Trump guy.
What?
He's like big, like Trump bad.
Oh.
Because, he used to be like a libertarian. So he's like,
Right.
Republican adjacent. But I think like many sort of like...
I saw something on his Wikipedia that he considers himself like socially left.
Yeah. That's like classic, like...
Centrist
vibes,
Yeah.
I'm socially liberal, but fiscally conservative. So, if you can screw whoever you want, but if you want welfare, not from my pocket. And he has a big thing. He's like,
Okay.
right, I moved to California, and then as a business owner, it made me like so conservative because it's so hard for business owners. And I was like, woe is me. To have my company acquired by Disney, it's so hard for us business owners.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting salty.
But I do think in sort of a conclusion, then kind of coming off that point where you don't think that his more like modern iteration of the Philip DeFranco Show is really transformational in a major way. His best work that we've covered, even if it can be, challenging to watch, is where he is kind of breaking ground on stories.
Yeah.
And the most popular content he's done was when he was covering YouTube news, because his enemy, the mainstream media, don't cover it. But now they kind of do, which is, I guess, maybe why I'm not sure why he's leaned back into, like...
Probably his personal interests,
Yeah,
like
and that's
he is
fine.
Nearly 40.
Yeah.
I think YouTube drama is very taxing on the soul.
I think he potentially has a sense of like, but I'm better than YouTube drama.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic.
Well, also he probably doesn't need the money, right? Like he's probably doing it for the love of the game at this point.
I have no idea, but ultimately, yeah, I think his best work has been, covering the Daddy of Five stuff, not the Gamergate stuff. That was not his best work, but I do think he has almost like, because he's a subject matter expert in YouTube. Like he actually has, I would say, something interesting to say, or like a perspective that mainstream platforms can't necessarily always offer. I think now, like, as time has gone on, I do think journalists are a better place to provide that opinion, but I don't know. Do you think
He does have a long form like podcast that he ran it like seasonally, so there's no episodes coming out now. But I do he interviewed a lot of YouTubers on that, and I'm sure I didn't listen to it, but I'm sure he has a good perspective there, and it might be something that's more interesting to us.
He went on Hot Ones.
He did. We tried to watch it. It was very boring.
It was fine. It was fine.
Yeah,
I think
it's fine.
Well, I mean, Hot Ones is sort of like Sean Evans is a great interviewer of celebrities that you're interested in. So
yeah, but even if you're not interested in someone, it
you
can
were like,
bring them around.
No more.
Yeah, I had a dim view of.
I mean, admittedly, after watching the Gamergate video, I'm like, I don't really care if this man how many hot wings he can eat.
Overwhelmingly, it's pretty telling. Like Phil's been on YouTube for 20 years, and he had one piece of work that we looked positively on.
We
kind of brings us into
don't know that.
What do you think the legacy of Phil DeFranco is?
I think the format.
Yep.
Being a news-ish channel on YouTube, but the thing is that now mainstream media has gotten around YouTube, so now there's so many news channels on YouTube that are helmed by journalists or are just like the TV broadcast on YouTube. So
he kind of lost his unique selling point, hey? Which was like being like a tabloid newspaper for the internet. Sorry, for the internet video.
There are so many other like channels and stuff that cover YouTube drama. So he also it's tough because it's not like situations like the Daddy of Five situation happen all the time. That's like a big story, an investigative journalism piece to a degree. So like what?
I'm more talking about like the video where you get like what's happening to Lindsay Lohan, followed by Megan Fox watch, followed by the new iPhone is out, followed by don't buy this game from woke developers.
Yeah.
Now he's just like a political commentary guy, and there's a dime a dozen of them.
I mean, while he's not getting the same level of views as he did, you know, when he was covering those very YouTube-centric stories, or maybe when he was potentially at his peak, he does still regularly get over 700,000 views, like between 700k to a mil. So he has like a consistent audience. For some people, it could be like Philip DeFranco is like my daily. There are like nearly 1 million dedicated Philip DeFranco watchers, and if you have an inbuilt audience like that who find you a source of comfort and familiarity, then that's probably what he's going off of, rather than trying to be like, do you know what I mean? Like he's trying to be like someone's favorite daily drive. Like he is like a radio host that people like and would like to listen to over someone else because of his little interjections and his tone and how he does it, rather than necessarily because he's like the best journalist. Like, would you say that's fair?
Yeah, 100%. He is a commentator or an entertainer. Like,
Yeah.
He's not a journalist.
This is a different episode to the ones we've covered. I think this is the first where they're not making like original creative work. So it's a bit like that does exist as a category of creator, and he was the pioneer of that in YouTube. So I think that's his legacy.
Yeah, I think that it's cool to see someone like pioneer a format. It's sad that it's been, for the most part, removed from YouTube. But, you know, I think we got a sense from the archival stuff that it wouldn't have a lot of timeliness anyway, and there'd be a lot of skeletons, you know, in that closet. But I think that, you know, other than that, I don't have a lot of positive stuff to say about Phil. Peace and love to those that enjoy him. If I saw you watching his video on the bus, I would think midwit and I'd get a major
Whoa.
No, it's all good. I just think, you know, maybe I'm a boomer for this, but if you want to read the news, you should read the news.
Yeah, I feel like I've already said I have a more medium take than you. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing for people to prefer this as a format.
Yep.
But I don't think you'll ever, if you really want to again get into the news, I don't think he will be your last stop. And he has said as much himself.
We're definitely ranking him bottom of the YouTubers we've watched so far.
The only thing I will say is, other than the early stuff which he's privated, which I am hoping in good faith that it's because he thinks it's bad, is that I don't think he has major controversies, which feels silly to say after talking about him having a bunch of what I would say is concerning takes.
Yeah.
But he's not, you know, as we saw, he did cover some of the Shane Dawson drama. He did not, like,
sure.
There's no allegations.
No controversy on his Wikipedia page. That's that's the bar.
Yay!
Good for him. Well done, Phil. Respect that. Lucy, to finish up, what have you been, or what are you subscribing to this week?
I am subscribing to Haig's milk chocolate buttons.
Wow.
They are so yummy.
What is Haig's?
Haig's is, I believe it's from Adelaide, actually. Yeah, it's like it's an Australian like boutique chocolate store.
Yep.
Multiple locations, none in Brisbane where we used to live, but several in Sydney and Melbourne and I believe Adelaide. And it's very yummy chocolate. Every time you buy chocolate, you get a little taster, and they give you some little niblets from a jar, which is very nice. It's very yummy. You like Haig's chocolate?
Haig's is, yeah, delicious.
It's so good. And I went and bought some little milk chocolate buttons recently, and we've had them in the fridge, and I hold them in my mouth like I'm like a mythical creature, and I let them melt in my mouth, and I savor it like a special treat, like I'm a little orphan.
Oh, I'm sure everyone loved that.
That's what I'm. It's so yummy. If you live in Australia, you should get some Haig's, and if you don't, come to Australia to get Haig's. What are you subscribing to?
Thank you for asking. I am subscribing to Invincible on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
I have been it's good to me. Like we watch a lot of shows together, but sometimes, you know,
a man's just got to be on his own.
I need a boy show.
Gotta go your own
And sometimes
way.
I see you like watching, and I kind of get this sense that you're like, I wanted to watch this show, but you watch plenty of shows without me. So you're like, I have to let my boyfriend have a thing. But Invincible is a comic book by Robert Kirkman, who wrote The Walking Dead, and it's an adaptation of that for Amazon Prime. So it's an animated adult superhero show. And I hesitated for a while because there's obviously like so much superhero media. We already watched The Boys,
which is also on Prime.
Yep, which is like another anti-superhero story.
Like a subversive superhero show.
And Invincible is that as well. But I gave it a go because I saw a lot of TikToks which were very negative about the show. They're like, this animation like sucks, like this show is bad. But I was watching them and I was like, you know, it actually looks kind of good. So like the haters actually made me watch, and I watched the first season.
Haters make you famous.
Yeah, and I thought it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it, and I'm about halfway through the second season, and I'm really excited to see where it ends up.
Yippee!
Cool. Okay,
Yay!
that is the Philip DeFranco episode of Rewind Time. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope that you're excited for us to resume our ordinary non-current events and news coverage topics.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I feel like that episode felt a bit grim. We're covering all the favorites: child abuse, anti-Semitism, sexism,
we have to
misogyny.
Go where Phil takes us, and his big hits cover
filled
these
us
topics.
in.
Oh no,
that's his pun.
Sup, you beautiful
bastard.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to that.
I'll include the audio of that.
But you won't have to listen to it anymore.
No, it's all over.
It's over.
So, yeah,
it's over.
Lucky
You're
us.
safe.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your comments on our episodes. Thank you for the ratings and reviews that I've seen people leaving on.
Really appreciate it. It does help us out, and it helps get the word out about the podcast to find other people who are interested in niche YouTube history. So thank you. And do let us know. I'm going to pass it over to you. What do you think of Philip DeFranco? Put it in the comments below. For our audio listeners, Max is shaking his head.
Yes.
Stop.
Yeah, I don't want to adopt any Philip DeFranco-isms if we can avoid it. But, okay, that's enough for this week. We will see you next week with another episode of Rewind Time. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.
Ah, oh, that's hot. That's hot.